Hello, BookTube. I went to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston again. Been going there quite a bit, far more. I stopped for a long time. For those of you who don't dote over my 2,000 videos, have never been to Boston. It's a used bookstore here in Boston that is unlike most used bookstores I have ever seen. Only a couple in America that I know of that are anything like it. It's right in the heart of Boston, and it's 3 stories. The third floor is rare and collectible books. You can go up there and look around, get something pricey for an uncle or something like that. The first and second floors are fiction and all branches of nonfiction, all reasonably priced, with a wonderful, friendly staff. Although don't tell them I said that. and outdoor, the lot next door to the building, is an enormous sale lot with $1, $3, and $5 books, and everything. The lot and the inside of the store are constantly being incredibly overturned. That's the amazing thing about the Brattle, is that the stock is constantly overturning. They're constantly buying. So it's not the situation that I've been in many, many little towns in America and Europe, where after very little time, if you're a true bookaholic, you get to know what's in your used bookstores. You know what's there. You can almost run your eyes mentally over the shelves as you're thinking about them. And the stock doesn't change once in a blue moon, and usually with stuff you don't want. That's not true with the Brattle. You see something new literally every day if you go every day. And I know that because there have been long stretches in my life where I did go every day. And then for a while recently, I stopped going because I had 2 sick, frail old dogs, and leisurely browsing at the Brattle. I went sometimes just to preserve my sanity, but I didn't go every day, and I didn't go for long. And then I had a brand new baby puppy, tiny little puppy, little rat-sized puppy, who I didn't know. You never know when you have a puppy that size what they're going to be like as a person. You don't know, are they going to chew on electrical wires? Are they going to eat something they shouldn't eat? Are they going to, get trapped somewhere or whatever, or make a huge howling noise or whatnot? So during the months when I was basically socializing my little Frida, I also didn't want to be gone for too long. But that process has now largely finished. She is a ball of energy, but she is much more balanced now. It's almost every week that it's more balanced than it was before. I just had Chris and Giselle Rhodes over here the other day, and I was astonished at how Frida behaved. She was really excited to see them, really happy to see new people, jumped all over them, gave them lots of scrutiny and close attention, and then settled down right away. So I have a little bit more freedom. I'm not going to overindulge it because I still do worry about her, and I don't want her to think that I'm just going to be gone all the time. And also, I'm happier in her company than I am without it. And she just doesn't like going on the subway, so I haven't been able to bring her to the Brattle since she was a tiny little baby. Didn't know any better, and could travel in one of those shoulder bags for little dogs with the space for their head to pop out. I'll never forget the day when I think I had to bring her. I had to go on an errand to the center of town, just up the street, and I didn't want to leave her. So I thought, I'll take you along. And she just immediately started nosing around that bag. I looked down at her and said, no. You are much too big for me to carry you. Thank you very much. You can walk on your own. But anyway, it's given me a little more freedom, and that's translated to me getting out and about a little more. And, of course, that immediately translates to going to the Brattle. So I went today, and it was a good trip. I wanted to show you the books, starting with this one, which I think we've seen on this channel before in hardcover. I get it whenever I see it and end up giving it away, even though it's a subject I really like and it's an author I really like. This is the historian Lisa Jardine, and this is On a Grander Scale, her biography, or big thick thing, of Christopher Wren, the legendary, you name it, and he did it. But he's most known now for his architecture, especially in the wake of the Great Fire of London. But he's an utterly fascinating figure. Knew everybody, corresponded with everybody, and was held in high esteem by almost everybody. And was a kind of Francis Bacon figure of his day in terms of the fact that he was really interested in everything and developed an expertise in a large number of fields. So he's fascinating to read about, and I love the book. I've read it twice, and it's a biography to keep. And I do want the hardcover. The American hardcover has a very nice design. It has a painted naked hardcover, and the dust jacket is half height and wraps around with a little hole in it so that the whole focuses on it's a very nice design. It tends to be why people want it, and so I give it away. So this was a case where I got this trade paperback, even though this will probably not be the edition that I keep. I just got it again, like other books we've seen here. I got it as kind of a placeholder, just a reminder. Since it was free, I got it, as a reminder to keep an eye out for the hardcover. And then these next ones are not reminders. They are finds that I really want to keep. This next one is a 2-volume hardcover from 1903 or something like that. Only at the Brattle could you get something like this for $3. And that's this. Modern Egypt by the Earl of Cromer. Volume 1 and Volume 2. Let me see if I can show you him. If I can show you his picture. I think his picture is in the front of Volume 1. Yeah, there he is. That is the Earl of Cromer, Evelyn Baring, who was the first Earl of Cromer, and who was, for a long time, Consul General in Egypt in the 1880s when there was catastrophe. Just the country was on the brink of complete dissolution. Its previous ruler had bankrupted it. There were all sorts of rumblings, nationalistic rumblings, all sorts of them. And it was still a British possession. And Cromer was sent there to take a firm hand, to figure out what was going on, to make reports, to put down insurrections, to prop up British-friendly rulers and whatnot. And it was an extremely controversial time. And as soon as he got back to England, he wrote this. He kept meticulous notes, and he had a huge, unimpeded access to a gigantic number of archives. Just he knew perfectly well, as he says at the beginning of these books, he knew perfectly well that he was ideally placed to write about this kind of explosive period in modern Egyptian history. He knew that he was perfectly placed to do that, so he did. Sat down, consulted all of his works, prized accuracy, and wrote up his accounts. And you don't have to be reading long in Volume 1 before you get to his very typical Victorian colonialist mind frame about how the native Egyptians are too slovenly and too sloppy to run their own country and really should be given a firm guiding hand. He was a true blue son of Victorian England. In fact, I think, if I remember correctly, in the opening of this book, he quotes Kipling about the love of the East, about the love of the Orient. And he had that love himself. He really did love what he knew of Egypt, of its people and of its country and its great history. His book will be fascinating. I haven't read the whole thing. I think once upon a time I read a chunk of Volume 1, but I've never actually read all the way through. He's a bit of a stodgy writer. It's not totally enjoyable in the way that so much else from the Victorian era, even in nonfiction, is. But it's a vitally important book for the history of Egypt immediately prior to independence. And and the title goes on. The title goes on. There is currently an heir who will become the Earl of Cromer, who's a bit of a hunk. he's I think probably by now he'd be in his early 20s, and when he was 18, he was he was a bit of a hunk. And I'm actually hoping that he develops a kind of a literary mindset. It's probably unlikely. It's probably unlikely. In fact, even now, if he's in his early 20s, I'd be willing to bet that he can't functionally read. He's never going to need to. But one way or another, the Earl of Cromer, the first one, the one who wrote this book, has come in for a good deal of historical revisionism. He is an easy target for historical revisionism, especially in the 21st century, if anybody bothered. I don't think anybody knows who he is. But when people do look at him, the online mentions, the online profiles and whatnot are scathing. There's a great deal of judging him by standards that are only, endemic to the 21st century. There's a great deal of unfairness. There's a great deal of omission of the things that he did and did not believe. So it'd be nice if somebody in the family would write an update. That would be wonderful. I don't know for sure that that hasn't happened. It might be that somebody has, that there's been someone literary in the family that I don't know about. I don't think so. I'm fairly up on the family, but I could be wrong. But it'd be nice if there'd be sort of a symmetry to it. If somebody from this family were to write a new account of Egypt, for instance, that would be great, or family history, one way or another. This will be stodgy reading, but I'm looking forward to it. Then the next two books are biographies of artists. One is new and one is old. And the old one is this. Look at the size of this thing. This is Jan Vermeer of Delft by Philip Hale. This huge thing. And the reason it's so big is because it reproduces all of Vermeer's artwork in gorgeous high-definition plates, some of which are in color. And this is from, I think, 1916? Something like that? When did you come out? 1913. This came out in 1913, and it was one of his goals in writing the book was to make the name of Vermeer better known in America among art-interested general readers than it was, because in his time in 1913 it wasn't very well known. And he goes at that with a vengeance. He decides the best way to do that is to stake the ground right at the beginning by calling Vermeer the greatest artist of all time. And he mentions, the ones you'll know about. He mentions Velázquez, and he mentions Leonardo da Vinci, and he comes up with reasons why they're not the equal of Vermeer. Talks about Vermeer's beautiful naturalism and the play of light, all the things that you typically hear Vermeer praised for. And and Philip Hale knew whereof he spoke, because he was a fixture in the Boston art scene of a century ago. For a long time, he was a very influential teacher. He was on a whole bunch of boards, worked at the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston, worked at the schools, taught elsewhere in the country, gave seminars abroad, and was also himself an accomplished painter. And also New England royalty, because he was the son of Edward Everett Hale, who is famous now, if he's famous for anything, as being the author of The Man Without a Country. Which people still sometimes read it in school, or at least know the name of it. But Everett Hale actually wrote a whole bookcase full of great books. He's a fantastic writer, was a fantastic writer. And his son wrote, this is his real masterpiece. This is the real big thing that he wrote. And I knew about it. Of course, I've seen a number of Philip Hale's paintings. But it's a testament to the wonder of the Brattle Bookshop that you could find such a thing there. This was $3. That you could find such a thing at the Brattle Bookshop sale lot and just walk away with it, this thing, and just read it yourself. I've never read his book on Vermeer. And I really love to, because it's partly a biography. It's everything that we know about Vermeer. But it's also a large chunk of this is his appreciations, his observations about Vermeer's paintings. There's the Girl with the Pearl Earring, famous from the novel by Tracy Chevalier. And that's the main reason that I'll read it, is because his observations about art will be fascinating. Maybe a little outdated. Philip Hale was, I could tell you a story, his book too. He was a deeply mean man. Very opinionated, but very mean. He never forgot a grudge, and he made a lot of them himself. And he was also extremely pompous in a way that you might think the Earl of Cromer was also extremely pompous from one look at him, and from all the things that I said about, his East is East and West is West, and then ever the twain shall meet. But the Earl of Cromer, in his book and in life, always put a high premium on always learning, on always being learning. Never completely crossed over your opinions. And Philip Hale's opinions were crusted over when he was in his 30s, and never changed. The only reason that he ever switched to start experimenting with impressionistic painting was because he felt like he was being left behind. He felt like the spotlight was moving away from him. So there'll be a great deal of stuff in this book about, I'm sure there'll be a great deal of stuff in this book about the difference between the layman's appreciation of artwork and the professional's appreciation, the connoisseur's appreciation of artwork, and that always drives me nuts. Absolutely nuts. because it's always wrong. And it leads to so much fallacious writing. I have read so many connoisseur accounts of artwork, even connoisseur descriptions of what's actually happening in a specific painting, and they're always wrong. They're always wrong. It's like they're not even seeing what's right in front of their eyes. And that kind of snobbishness bothers me. But he is very interesting on art. So, although I don't agree with him, I think that Vermeer is one of the greatest painters of all time. I don't know how you could single out one person as the greatest painter of all time, considering how many schools, how many skills, how many mind frames there are. But one person, one painter that Hale doesn't even bother to raise and dismiss as a competitor for Vermeer is the subject of the other book I got, The Find of the Day, and that is Caravaggio. This is M. I don't know if you can see the letter. The letter M. This is the front of the UK hardcover. It's by Peter Robb, and it's his big fat biography of, that's the dust jacket. That's the spine that I'm going to be seeing on my shelf. This is his big fat biography of Caravaggio, who, as he says, was Michelangelo Merisi of the town of Caravaggio. So he calls him M throughout the book. Specifically, he does that to dislodge your familiarity with the name Caravaggio, so that he can tell you a human story. I think it's a brilliant idea. I read this in its much less attractive American edition when it came out and was bowled over by it. Just bowled over. I loved it. Thought it was a masterpiece of the biographer's art. I got rid of my copy because I had a young artist friend at the time who was in my apartment at the time, saw it, and just went nuts about it. And your duty's clear when that happens, right? No matter what, your duty's clear. I have it out now. I have an ironclad out now. If somebody does that, I can simply lie. I can tell a good-natured lie. I can say, I actually need it for research. Sorry, I'll find you a copy. And I make good on the lie, because I do find copies for people all the time of things they want. But at the time, I didn't have that. I wasn't in reviewing, so I gave the book away, and I'd never seen it since. And I would have got it even if it had been a trade paperback. But instead, I found this gorgeous UK hardcover with an extremely appealing dust jacket. Of course, you don't have to be an art connoisseur to disagree with Philip Hale when he ignores Caravaggio as a rival for Vermeer. Caravaggio is certainly a great artist, certainly as great as Vermeer. But, boy, what a life. Oh, my, what a life. Just a raucous, endlessly lying, raw, violent life. 90% of the violence of which was caused by the fact that Caravaggio, the man, could not be gay in his life, in his world. He could not be the thing that he was. He couldn't deny his appetites any more than any other artist can. But they took hunched and twisted and dark forms in order to be expressed, because there was no place for him. There was no personhood for him. He couldn't take a lover. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And Rob does a terrific job following Caravaggio through a million records. The tedium of the document shifting that he must have done to write this book, it was worth it. It almost always is in a case like this, because no one could do better. But it must have been mind-numbingly dull. But I'm glad to have it, especially in such a lovely UK edition. I wasn't expecting that. And that was it. That was my Brattle haul for today. It was M. Oh, God, these are very heavy. I'll see how we can do this. Vermeer of Delft. Modern Egypt by the Earl of Cromer. And, well, of course, Lord Cromer's Egypt is long gone, but still. And On a Grander Scale by Lisa Jardine about Christopher Wren. That's not a bad Brattle haul. That's almost all books that I will keep. So it was well worth the time to lug them back here and to talk about them with you. So I'll wrap this up for now before this gets too long. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.